Hello Wastelanders, Vlad here. Today I'm going to introduce you to Katherine Swan, our new unlockable ally at level 25 of the new season Zorbo's Revenge. Let's jump on in. So before we speak with Miss Katherine Swan, first you're going to need to claim her from your latest scoreboard, Zorbo's Revenge. She is located at level 25, so make sure you unlock her at level 25 before trying to place her item in the camp so that she can become your ally. Now, once you have claimed her on the scoreboard, you can find her under the Allies section, and she has this desk that is decorated with a few different stuffed items, such as the rocket and the alien, plus this little globe. And once the item is placed, then Katherine will spawn, and you can introduce yourself to her. Now let's get into speaking with Miss Katherine Swan and learn a little bit more about our new ally.
Hello there, traveler. My name is Kat. I'm an astronomer. The pleasure is all mine, darling. I've never met a person so polite and well-mannered. No human, anyway. Of course, I should mention, I'm not just any astronomer. My study is specific to one particular field. Extraterrestrial life. Well, yes. I don't deny my time is often limited by earthly considerations, but that is where people like yourself come in. Benefactors who will gladly donate their time and resources in exchange for that which is priceless. Knowledge. Still, if you're concerned about the practicalities of having me in your employ, I can provide you with schematics and weapons relevant to my study. The abductions happen at night, darling, but point taken. Here on Earth, I've met my share of harebrains and nincompoops. It'd be foolish to assume alien life doesn't have its fair share of the same. Of course you do, my darling. Everyone that encounters my otherworldly charm assumes my story is as infinite as the cosmos. But I assure you, no life is as interesting as the stars. Not even mine. Yet I will do my best to make it so. So go ahead, ask away. For me, the thrill of discovery is enough. And would it be cruel to say that terrestrials bore me? Well, that's not entirely fair. I've never met an alien after all. Who's to say they aren't dreadful conversation partners? Why, indeed. I suppose, like all discoveries, the point is to not only learn about others, but learn about yourself. There's no denying that humanity is, more or less, a failed experiment. But it's an experiment that's been given a second roll of the dice. An encounter with an advanced civilization would give us something to aspire to be. Or at worst, give us an example of what not to become. And that's why I believe it's important. You're right, darling. I didn't answer your question. Not truthfully, anyhow. The reality is, as a teenager, I planned on majoring in one of the standard disciplines. Chemistry, physics, or biology. But for whatever reason, I never felt fulfilled. It all seemed so mundane. I read a poem, When I Heard the Learned Astronomer. I can recite it for you, if you like. Very well. When I heard the learned astronomer, by Walt Whitman. When I heard the learned astronomer. When the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me. When I was shown the charts and diagrams, to add, divide, and measure them. When I sitting heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room. How soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself, in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time, looked up in perfect silence at stars. Exactly, darling. I feel it applies to everyone. From the astronomers who study the sky, to a mole miner burrowing tunnels in the ground. Science is the foundation for what we do, but not the foundation of why we do it. Gazing up at the stars, I felt a passion I didn't have for other fields. That is not something I will soon forget. I don't know if I ever have a free moment. When your life's work literally hangs over your head, it's always on your mind. Yes, like the Sword of Damocles, but that's hardly the case. Astronomy is what I love, but even a loved one can suffocate you at times. In any case, to answer your question, I like to drink wine and play board games, believe it or not. It's the perfect way to disengage. Well, I'd be hard-pressed to choose just one, but I suppose I'm partial to the legendary run, despite all its flaws. We should definitely carve out some time to play together. Fair warning, though, I can get quite competitive. None I dare speak of publicly. My parents met under unusual circumstances. My mother being a former patient of Allegheny Asylum. For years they told me she was a nurse. When the scandal broke, she decided to confess to the lesser crime of being a patient. Oh yes. When your passion is studying little green men in flying saucers, it does beg the question, how far does the apple fall from the tree? I even found an actual apple tree and shook it with every muscle in my body. It was my own little Newtonian experiment. But in the midst of making a fool of myself, apples landing on my head, I realized I never had any reason to suspect my mother was ill. It wasn't until she told me her history that the thought wormed its way into my head. A nail file and a cake? That's their version, at least. In reality, it was just university pressure. My father worked at VTU, and was in need of Mother's help for a paper he was working on. He tracked her down, pulled some strings, and got her out. She stole a worker's uniform on the way out, though, which always amused me. They died shortly after the war, thank goodness. At the time, it was quite traumatic. But now I realize they were spared the worst of it. Certainly. Of course. As any curious mind should. What did you want to ask me? There is one tale that caught my interest. A story about flashing lights, floating octopi, and, curiously, the smell of hot dogs. Naturally. What some have described as a round octopus-like head, I believe to be a space helmet. Which, of course, only leads to more questions. Is our atmosphere toxic to their species? Or is it merely the composition? If only I could speak with the man who was abducted, Mr. Colton Pickens, I would be able to do more than hunt and peck for clues. I believe he was telling the truth. But his truth, or rather, the truth his abductors wanted us to know. Keep in mind, our dear hot dog vendor did not have to be returned. He did not have to be contacted. He could have easily been abducted and disappeared, and no one would have bothered to look for his remains. The question I struggle with is why. Would that not seem rather inefficient? We have ample medical records, information that could be easily obtained at a local library. Nor would I think a man who lives selling and consuming hot dogs to be a model representative of humankind. In any case, part of me is envious of our dear Colton. It makes me wonder what the criteria is for abduction, and why I can't seem to meet it. I want to be invited. I want to travel to the furthest star and walk on worlds beyond. But if I am abducted, I hope it's with someone like yourself by my side. With my brains and your ingenuity, commandeering that spaceship would not be out of the realm of possibility. And then, we'd get to travel the galaxy on our own terms. Yes, I have. Suffice to say, I was quite disappointed with what I found. And I don't mean the army of hostile robots. But I suppose it's not the first time scientific discovery has been used as a front for ulterior motives. In this case, weather manipulation. Yes, but if that were your motive, you should advertise it plainly. It's like when my ex told me she loved books, and I'd find her novels while I was on travel as a gift. It would have saved both of us a lot of trouble if she admitted she couldn't read. Although, I suppose the inability to read road signs was the first clue. But she was cute, so I believed her. They are an interesting lot, no doubt, but their motives leave me suspicious. I would almost prefer villains like Dr. Zorbo, who laugh maniacally and wear their brains on their head. Villains who look and talk like us are far more insidious. My apologies, darling. Villain is the wrong word. They are hoarders, and the natural inclination of a hoarder is not to share. If they were to discover the body of an alien species and their technology, I don't think they'd be announcing their findings in the Watoga Times. But I suppose they also wouldn't sell those ray guns to the local raider clans, so at least there's that. None that have been confirmed, but many whom I've suspected. There was the ex who pronounced sugar bombs with a long S. Extremely suspicious, that one. There was my pet tabby cat, Herschel, named after Caroline, who seemingly teleported from place to place, although I never witnessed the act. And of course there's you, who I find unlike anyone I've ever met before. Well, that or you're just a highly productive, high-performing, and high-functioning individual. That is one too many highs, and I don't even use chems. Still, a cursory examination of your body shows you are human. Not that I've done anything more in-depth, of course. That would be inappropriate. Maybe. It would make sense for aliens to disguise themselves as felines, after all. They come and go as they please, and yet are often adopted and cared for by humans, allowing for easy observation. If you have a few hours, I could probably tell you all about her. Suffice to say, thinking about the experience is difficult to stomach. If I'm being perfectly honest, I only started dating her because I thought she was an alien. So, my eventual disappointment was on several levels. Of course. How does that Bible verse go? Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Oh, but they are. Easily influenced, always submitting to their desires, and they have a conscience that is all but mute. Contrast that with true valor, like the brave astronauts who once inhabited that station, and it paints quite the portrait. Why, no. An astronaut in uniform, as in she just fell from the sky? How is that even possible? Well, the deep sleep part sounds wonderfully relaxing, but I have to imagine that it was anything but. That sounds like the ending to every sci-fi movie I've ever seen. In the end, the true monster is man. I'm glad she managed to survive his clutches. I would like to speak with her one day. That would be an interesting conversation, to be sure. I'm of two minds, really. On the one hand, Any sort of scientific curiosity and interest in astronomy is a positive force. On the other hand, if that information is presented in a scientifically inaccurate sideshow, some of that positivity goes to waste. But to your question, do I believe in little green men, or that an evil green doctor is trying to thwart our attempts to travel through space? Well, I've seen no evidence to support that. But I'm not ruling it out entirely. It's not implausible. After all, the first organism in space was not a man, but a Persian house cat named Mr. Pebbles. We call ourselves brave explorers, and yet we've often had our pets do the dirty work that we are too cowardly to do. I don't think it's impossible, no. It's no more ridiculous in mythology than any of our current religions. Whether it's a vengeful god or an evil doctor with a death ray, the stories originate from somewhere. Sometimes, that story is a complete fiction, born from the imagination. Other times, it only seems that way. I find his portrayal to be more absurd than Dr. Zorbo, to be honest, but only because he's meant to be a mirror image of man. And we delude ourselves into thinking we're better than we are, especially the men. A character perfect for Hollywood. So thin, you can barely make her out. If the writers know their history, maybe her name's a reference to Annie Jump Cannon, the astronomer who discovered stellar spectra. I just wish they gave her more lines so we could know for sure. Certainly. Of course. Naturally, darling. What can I do for you? You mean, besides my winsome personality? For one, I can help you use your scopes more effectively. Whether you use that scope to gaze at the stars or target the head of a blood eagle is up to you. Of course. One has to make a living, after all. In this world, we can hardly depend on wealthy benefactors and the kindness of strangers. But rest assured, anything I sell to you has been thoroughly investigated, poked, prodded, and inquired. In short, they have exhausted their scientific value and must now enter their second phase of life as a commodity. There was a meteor shower the other day that led to some interesting discoveries. Take a look. Nothing more depressing than clouds. The stars are tucked away, and their light shines for no one. Naturally, darling. What can I do for you? Happy stargazing. Oh, what is it? Understood.
So there you have it, everybody. A quick introduction to our latest ally, Katherine Swan. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest content from Vladministrator Gaming. And until next time, I'll see you in the Wasteland.